Well, hello, 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 hello. As always, welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we have a very interesting article because I think this is a question we've all asked at some point during this entire ridiculousness. That is, when are people going to realize just how bad Brexit actually is? I've always said from the very beginning that Brexit wasn't going to be like an immediate crash. It was just going to be a slow crash. Like Brexit is a long-term damage to this country, and it's never going to get better. It's just going to get steadily and steadily worse. Indeed, today, in today's Mail on Sunday, they have proclaimed that we need to work together with the EU to try and remove this border bureaucracy. And you're like, hold on for a second. Hold on for a second, guys. You are aware we just left the single market and the customs union, which got rid of all this border bureaucracy you are now complaining about. And honestly, it's absolutely unbelievable. But this is the bizarre thing that we have gotten into, where even some of the right-wing press are like, well, hey, why does this have to be in place? Things used to be easier and smoother. What's happened? Why in the past year are all these new bureaucratic borders like springing up? Why are they stopping us all of a sudden doing this stuff? It's because we left the EU. And as I've said to a lot of people, I still am very much of the opinion, when we look back at the Norway debacle, that the government this year is going to be all about, isn't Brexit a success? Look how nothing has gone wrong. Look at all these bonuses and benefits that we have made up. And again, I can guarantee you that will be coming at the end of the year. And then, as Norway reported, the government is not interested in talking to the EU again until 2022. Why on earth would you have like a year of almost no diplomatic talking or diplomatic interaction with the EU, only to then next year just start it up again? It's because it's a giant shadow puppet show. They want to look like that they're not immediately capitulating to the EU, like we have just done very recently with the whole UK maker marks. But like I say, this is the madness that is going on in Brexit Britain. So, as always, before we do jump into today's article, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all the people who do support the channel that way. So, this comes from the Midweek Herald. The title is, "The Brexit Turkeys Are Coming Home to Roost." Last Thursday, I left England for the first time in 2 years, headed by car to Glasgow to see our 30-year-old son. Last we'd seen him at last Christmas of 2019, during which time he had married, with us unable to attend. It was a wonderful 3-night stay, and we were all reassured that although he and his wife live in South Glasgow, where lockdown had been severe as anywhere in the UK, that all was well with them. Of course, travel is always an opportunity for understanding each other and things outside of one's normal perspective, which can get a bit of East Devon centric in my case. So, South Glasgow. Well, the area is a bit like Hackney or Shoreditch or Brixton in London, a place where people used to flee from 30 years ago are now desperate to move back to. The youngsters are attracted by the amazing new restaurants and shopping and cultural community ignited by the Kurdish refugees from at least back to the First Gulf War in 1991 and their later arrivals. Adding to that mix have been the Polish, Romanian, Hungarian, as well as other arrivals, all benefiting from freedom of movement within the European Union. The result of all these arrivals, economic growth, the restoration of a dying community, and the refurbishment of miles of once notorious tenement flats into something that is actually desirable. However, On the long drive south, listening to Radio 4 all day for 7.5 straight hours, all I could hear was stories of the results of leaving the EU that were happening right here, right now. I have already written about how your own waste and recycling services have been affected by the grave shortage of HGV drivers nationally. And again, I thank you for your patience. Now the turkeys are really coming home to roost, or rather, they're not. To put a bid in for your Christmas turkey now, because all over the turkeys are breeding parts of the country, there's nobody left to actually rear them. Meanwhile, food processors, represented by the Association of Independent Meat Suppliers, are begging the government to allow more prisoners on day release to process our meats. You might have to learn how to wrap bacon around your own sausages if you want pigs in blanket this year. And of course, just this last week, McDonald's are telling us that they are now unable to provide milkshakes and other products, while last week, Nando's, whose whole raison d'etre is chicken, told us that they were running out of chicken. Still off the radar, of course, are the inner city schools I have been told about, whose roles have shrunk to an economically non-viable state-by-state departure of EU origin children. And in summary, the worst element of the Brexiteers, they wanted the Europeans sent back to where they belong. Well, guys, they've heard that and they've gone. And many of us who warned you, who have to now live with the consequences of the propagandizing of the cost Daily Express, the Mail, and the Telegraph. So what on earth has this act of self-harm actually achieved? A supposed proud global Britain resorting to prison labor. If Dickens were alive today, he'd have a novel about this written and published by Christmas. And being Dickens, who was a bit preachy sometimes, to be frank, he'd look for a moral to the whole chaotic story. But I can guess what his would have been. If we were to actually suggest one to his Brexit is a story of devious men lying to a nation to gain power, who promised a bounty for the nation's health and wealth and knew they were lying. Most of all, these men who stand at the same time, judges by the consequences, who promised that they would own the result. Well, where are they now? Tory fellow travellers, it looks to me that you were about as well prepared for this one as you were for our shameful departure from Afghanistan, which you have the moral courage to, will you have an actual moral courage to admit this now? And I have to say, this is one of those things of where, like, I don't think this is going to happen for a while yet. I do not think this will happen for a while. I think it's going to be at least maybe the end of next year before we start to maybe see, shall we say, a lot of people coming around to the idea of the fact that actually, yes, Brexit has damaged the country, and oh my God, what have we done? Why did we vote for this? Because as always, we've been talking about, much of the damage of Brexit has been not only swept under the rug of COVID, but at the same time, COVID has put the foot on the accelerator for many of these problems, especially the labor shortages, a lot faster than a lot of people were thinking. So in a way, Brexit and COVID, the combination of this, which many of the Brexiteers were thankful for because, COVID could cover up many of the damage. In reality, all I'd say is that COVID has literally put like a 2-year accelerator on what Brexit would have done if COVID hadn't come. Like, I genuinely think that would be the case, that's where we'd be now. I think Brexiteers would be living it up, saying, oh, there's no damages at all. Look, nothing's happened. But with COVID brought into the mix, it's merely just put the massive foot on the accelerator and sped things along by, I think, about 2 years. And I think that's where we ended up today. And of course, the Brexiteers are never going to admit, of course, that Brexit was the problem, even though, just as I began this stream, I talked about the piece in the Mail on Sunday saying that we should link up with the EU to get rid of this border bureaucracy. And yet we have to ask the question, guys, you do realize all this bureaucracy has come because we left the EU. So how many more times will we have to point this out over the coming years? I guarantee you this will not be the last time. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page. And of course, the one-off donation link, Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching. And I'll see you all